Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a source that is absolutely going to flip the script on who, or honestly what, is actually running the show inside your body. I mean, we're so used to giving our brains all the credit, right? But the material we're unpacking today, it's pointing to a massive biological paradigm shift. We're talking a wild blend of modern microbiome science, ancient philosophy, and yes, even a little cosmic theory.
So think about it for a second. Who is really making your decisions? Like when you decide to just push through a super grueling workout, or you get that sudden, undeniable burst of courage. Is that actually your brain firing on all cylinders? Or is it possible that something else entirely is pulling the strings? Well, according to the source we're looking at today, your choices, your personality, even your willpower, they might not be coming from your brain at all. Actually, they're coming from your gut bacteria.
Right out of the gate, this source makes a spectacularly bold claim. It argues that 90% of human existence is rooted in the gut. Yeah, 90%. Not the brain, the gut. The speaker is basically saying we've got our own biology completely backwards. The idea here is that everything, from your emotional resilience to your actual life destiny, is dictated by these tiny microscopic communities just hanging out in your digestive tract.
So to really wrap our heads around this highly unique philosophy, we're going to follow a quick roadmap. First up, we'll look at the brain versus the gut. Then we'll explore bacteria and your true personality. After that, we'll dive into the wisdom of Hara, move into cosmic energy in bacteria, and finally wrap up with how to actually nurture your inner bugs.
All right, let's jump right into part one, brain versus the gut, and where our true intelligence actually lies.
Now, the source draws this incredibly stark, uncompromising line between what the brain does and what the gut does. The argument here is that the brain, it just stores general equalizing facts. It processes basic logic, like 1 + 1 = 2. It's essentially just a biological filing cabinet or a memory card. But the gut, that is where your true individuality lives. The gut is the engine of your willpower, your courage, and your drive to take action. So if the brain is just a database, the gut is the CEO actually making the tough calls.
Actually, the source sums up this entire view perfectly with this quote. The brain is just another organ. The gut is the center of human existence. The speaker is totally convinced that our modern society massively overvalues the brain. I mean, we celebrate academic intelligence all the time, right? But the argument here is that without the life-driving force of the gut, all that brain power is just passive knowledge. It's just sitting there waiting to be activated.
Moving on to part 2, bacteria, your true personality, and meeting your internal board of directors.
Okay, so if the gut is the CEO, then the trillions, literally trillions of bacteria living inside it are the board of directors. And this philosophy totally redefines how we think about personality. It claims that things like neurosis or a lack of willpower or even having immense courage, they aren't just genetic in the classic sense. Instead, these traits are supposedly part of your gut microbiome environment. The idea is that you inherit this baseline bacterial balance from your parents, sure, but then it gets deeply, deeply shaped by your diet and your lifestyle over time.
To really drive home just how powerfully these bacteria supposedly affect our behavior, the source shares a super fascinating and honestly pretty extreme anecdote about fecal transplants. The speaker claims that if you were to take the gut bacteria from a really calm person and transplant it into a violent prisoner, that prisoner's personality would suddenly become remarkably calm. But here's the catch, it only lasts for about 3 days. Why? Well, because the body's antibodies quickly realize this bacteria is foreign and they reject it. It's exactly like a body rejecting an organ transplant. So the big takeaway there is that we literally can't just permanently swap out our bugs for someone else's better bacteria. And the source argues we really wouldn't want to do that anyway. Think about it. If we could synthesize some perfect, universal bacteria and just give it to everyone on Earth, sure, maybe everyone becomes a genius like Einstein. But as the speaker points out, if everyone is Einstein, humanity completely loses its purpose. It loses its diversity and that necessary friction that pushes us forward. Our microbiomes are highly unique, almost like fingerprints, and the source claims that's exactly what creates our beautiful individual destinies.
Which brings us to part 3, the wisdom of Hara, an ancient Japanese intuition.
Long before microscopes were ever around to see these tiny bacteria, ancient Japanese culture seemed to intuitively understand this modern microbiome science. And that brings us to the concept of Hara, which literally translates to the belly or the gut. In traditional Japanese philosophy, Hara is viewed as the actual seat of courage, resolve, and basically the human soul. The source points out that traditional phrases like hara ga swaru, which translates to having your gut set, Well, they exist because people inherently knew that true unflinching willpower comes from the physical gut, not the head.
And guess who lives inside the hara? The mushi. Now, traditionally, this word means bugs or spirits in the belly. Think about phrases we use today like, a little bug told me, or having a gut feeling. The speaker draws a direct line between these traditional mushi and modern gut bacteria. But they aren't framed as just cold clinical microbes. No, this philosophy treats them as loyal, almost cute little internal companions that constantly guide our emotions. And because of that, they require our careful attention.
This actually leads to a really fascinating application called Haradoku, which basically means reading with your gut. The source actively warns against reading just to memorize data with your brain. The argument is that if you do that, you just become what the speaker humorously calls a trivia uncle. Someone who just spouts random facts at parties but has no real depth or courage. True reading, Haradoku, means using your gut bacteria to connect on a deep soul level with an author's true intent.
All right, let's step into part 4, cosmic energy and our microscopic companions.
Now, we are navigating into definitely the most esoteric, highly philosophical part of the source material, the connection between the universe itself and our microbiome. According to the speaker, the universe is constantly emitting these vast energies. We're talking cosmic forces of love, truth, and righteousness. But there's a pretty big catch. The theory here suggests that human flesh, just entirely on its own, is completely incapable of receiving these cosmic frequencies directly. Essentially, our human bodies just don't have the biological hardware to tune into that station.
So, how do we ever get inspired then? How do we feel the urge to create art or just do a good deed? Well, the source proposes a completely unique mechanism. It claims our gut bacteria actually act as biological antennae. It goes like this. Step 1, the bacteria tune into and receive that cosmic energy of love and truth. Step 2, they process it internally. And step 3, the bacteria send specific electrical commands all the way up through the nervous system to the brain, essentially commanding the brain to take action. And the speaker notes here that modern science is actually increasingly proving that the primary flow of signals in the body really is from the gut to the brain and not the other way around.
Which naturally brings us to our final section, Part 5, Nurturing Your Inner Bugs.
I mean, if our entire individual destiny relies on these tiny organisms, how are we supposed to actually care for them? The source traces out a pretty clear timeline of gut health to explain this. In the past, specifically looking at Japan's Meiji era, the claim is that people lived in perfect harmony with their bacteria thanks to a diet of natural, fermented foods. But then we hit the modern era, and the speaker views our current era as a time of serious destruction. The argument is that chemical additives, synthetic foods, and antibiotics are just devastating our microbiomes, which is supposedly leading to a massive rise in neurosis and a widespread lack of willpower. So the future, according to this philosophy, relies entirely on conscious healing by going back to the right foods. So, practically speaking, what are the physical steps we're supposed to take? Well, you have to literally feed your bacteria what they actually want. The source heavily recommends a diet rich in traditional fermented foods. We're talking things like authentic, rich miso soup, and just generally balanced natural nutrition. And just as importantly, the speaker warns that you must strictly avoid synthetic additives and chemicals whenever you possibly can, because these are essentially acting like poison to your inner mushi.
But, and this is key, it's not just about physical food here. The psychological aspect of this whole philosophy is presented as being equally important. You actually have to send love to your bugs. Seriously, the speaker claims that if you consciously trust, thank, and project love down toward your gut bacteria, they will actually respond to that energy. The idea is that they become stronger, more active, and fiercely loyal to you, basically serving as your ultimate internal allies for navigating whatever challenges life throws your way.
Wow. Okay, so we have covered a whole lot of ground today in this explainer. We've gone all the way from the hard limits of our logical brains to literal cosmic antennae living right there in our stomachs. So I'm going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative question to chew on. Are you living your life purely through the cold, calculated logic of your brain, or are you ready to finally trust and nurture those loyal little bugs in your gut? Because according to everything in this source, they might just be the ones holding the actual blueprint to your true destiny.